right, today we are speaking with John Timar. I'm really excited to have this chance to talk with John. When I think about dynamic leaders, he definitely comes top of mind. When I've worked with him in the past, he's driven exponential growth, like in a way that I can't even describe. So he's got a lot of great ideas, and in terms of just from hustle, innovative ideas, just is able to make things happen in a way that's pretty unique. So I think it'll be a really interesting conversation. So John, just to get started, maybe you could just talk a little bit about how your path to being a business leader.
My path.
Yeah, your
Okay.
path.
I think it was a whole lot of hustle that got me into leadership positions because nothing really worked out for me in the early years of my career. I was slinging left and right trying to get an opportunity. I couldn't get opportunities, maybe I was applying for the wrong opportunities or I didn't know the right people, but it just didn't work out for me. But yeah, I did start out my career as a college dropout playing guitar. Some on the wall behind me. I ended up realizing that was not going to be my strong suit in life, although I still love playing and I'm always down to jam, by the way. But uh, but yeah, I ended up being like joining the Navy. I really wanted to test myself. I became a Navy SEAL, and that was really cool. I learned a lot there, and decided to take it on the road. I went and finished college, and then I kind of worked my way up in a variety of positions early on, and that just one opportunity led to the next, and I really I didn't do well with like large bureaucracies, and I was really bored in environments with lots of infrastructure, and I hate rule sets. I hate big rule sets. I mean, part of that's probably just me being a very rambunctious kid growing up. Part of it's probably just because my sort of becoming a Navy SEAL. It's you're trying to figure out how to bend the rules and bend the universe to the things that you need to get done. And we have a reputation that's both good and bad for that. So I kind of self-selected into smaller, more nimble companies that were some might call them startups. Maybe they were startups, but they were a little bit further down the curve to where there wasn't insecurity in the startups. One that I got into was there's one that was we created a subsidiary within a larger corporation that did a few $100 million a year. So that there was a lot of security in that. So it was kind of an idea. You got a taste, but it wasn't like there was no real benefit outside the experience. It wasn't going to be it wasn't going to be financially beneficial in any way, but it was cool being a pioneer. Then I was in another business that was it had been bootstrapped a few years before I got there, but it was angel investors sort of like bootstrapped, but it got to the point where it was massively profitable, and it was still in the early days of its development as a business. And so it was really cool. There was a lot of hustle in that company, and the guy who ran it, I mean, he was like the epitome of hustle and the nerdiest frame ever. So that was really cool. So I got those experiences. And I kind of used that to pivot into a tech company, and the tech company it was really my first experience with venture backing. So is venture capital backed, and that one was really interesting because that company went through a massive like surge right when I got there, but then there were some decisions that were made and some things that didn't pan out the way that the company anticipated, and it literally fell off the cliff. And so I got to ride that wave up and then down, and then I got to be part. I was one of the few people that like survived it to be part of the team to turn it back around. But that was all fine, like venture backed, and then I ended up in the last 5 years, all the way up until a few months ago, I was the president, COO, and then CEO of Killcliff. So that was a really cool story where I literally was outside my comfort zone into a company that was private equity backed. That was losing more money than it was making. I mean, like it was losing more money than its gross revenue. That's how bad it was, right? So, but it had a cool brand, but it was just completely upside down, and I got involved in that, and I turned that business around, and we went gangbusters. We tripled we tripled the top line revenue. The money, the business was not EBITDA positive. It wasn't even close to it, but we improved the EBITDA by like 80%. And it was a private equity backed company where the objective was not profitability at that time, but it was top line growth in a very smart way. So I had that experience, and then now I've stepped away from that. I'm on the board of that business, and I'm in the process of, I manage 4 brands currently. 2 of the brands I own, and 2 of the brands I'm launching and pivoting for a private investment group out of Chicago. So like a lot of different experience, but that's kind of, I don't know if that may have been too much of an intro, but
Oh, that's awesome, man.
kind of like I've been in a bunch of different industries and bunch of different roles, and I was very fortunate in my last job when I was at Killcliff. I was in a situation where I had investors that were completely tapped out, that were frustrated, where everything they'd been tried before me had failed. And so they were willing to give a guy with no experience a chance. And so that gave me a huge opportunity to learn, make mistakes, but also it gave me this blank canvas because of the challenges the business had, to like really make some bold moves and just people like not overthink it. Let's just go, move fast. Let's learn, let's iterate, let's be agile, and let's see if we can turn the business around. And we were very successful with that.
No, you did some amazing things there. Hopefully we can get into some of them. What I see a lot of SEALs are successful in business. What do you think it is? Is it the training, or is it who goes in? What do you think it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I did not prepare for that question in any way whatsoever. So this is just completely riffing on what I think.
Okay.
Look, I think there's a few things, and I could be wrong. I mean, I'm speak from my perspective, but there's something when you're in a community like the SEAL teams where there's an adrenaline, there's a high risk environment, there's a level of creativity and a level of there's a level of flexibility you have and creativity in kind of implementing what you do, and you're kind of always, I mean, the SEAL teams like to organize their operations where they're choosing the battle space and they're executing it so a small force can be successful against a larger force, and there's a lot of tactics to go along with that. But I think at its core, it's kind of like these people are effectively living in a high paced, high adrenaline environment that's also very high risk. And I think there's a lot that attracts people and it's not very bureaucratic. I mean, every organization, especially in the military, even in these small groups, they have their bureaucracy because there's of everything that goes into those institutions. But if you were to look at like this, the military is probably inherently the less bureaucratic place that exists. It's the most entrepreneurial. You're like an entrepreneurial soldier. And I think that's what happens is guys get out. They're extremely confident. They're risk seeking, and they're not afraid of being bold, but they're also very smart people.
Right.
And there's a brotherhood and network. Like there's a community that kind of helps each other out too. So there is that support network that exists. So I think that's what happens is guys, they're creative dudes that like to live literally on the edge. They like to be at the edge of the envelope, and entrepreneurship is a pathway that provides that sort of gratification, that high risk, high reward behavior set really fits nicely into it. So I think that's why, and I think that's why the guys get attracted to it. But what the ones who make it through and are successful, I think that goes back to the resilience and the work ethic and the focus and all the things that come along with just becoming a Navy SEAL in the first place.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But I mean, working with you, I was like, I just started putting it together. I was like, whoa, that was, I think like TRX was started by a Navy SEAL. I mean,
Randy Hetrick, yeah.
Like the number of companies, if you go look into it, it's pretty amazing. I mean, it's not something you'd necessarily put like 1 and 1 equals 2. So I think it was really interesting to see that how successful a lot of the SEALs have been. All right, I'm gonna throw you for a loop on this one too. So
Man, I'm ready.
You're a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
I am.
Yes. So what do you like like parallels between, training for jiu-jitsu, being in matches, and in the business world?
Yeah, I bet there's literally like websites that are full of this stuff, and they make it seem very romantic too. So I think there's, that's, I'm trying to think if like what I would take from jujitsu and apply. There's a few things, right? So I think when you think about jujitsu, and there's a guy who like everybody really looks up to in the sport. There's a lot of people in the sport that people look up to, but there's this one guy, John Timar, and he's the coach of I think they call themselves New Wave Jiu Jitsu at this point, but it's Gordon Ryan is probably the most recognized athlete in the sport, and he's his coach. And John's a very scientific guy, and he looks at jujitsu like chess, but like the like when you're applying jujitsu well, you're taking all of your strength and applying it to a weakness of your opponent in a very surgical way, and that's how you get that idea of this, like in jujitsu, the concept of a smaller opponent being able to defend themselves and potentially be not do more than defend themselves, actually put down good offense against a larger opponent to beat a larger opponent. It really comes down to the technique, the precision of technique, and the execution of the moves that allow for that sort of dominance to emerge. And I think when you're looking at startup companies, it's not so different. I mean, you're solving a problem, and you need to put all your focus and your effort and apply your strength into exploiting the weakness or the opportunity in the market. So I think there's a good analog there. And then I think one of the things that I like about jujitsu, which which is attracted to me in the first place, because as you get older and you're not playing high school or college sports anymore, you're not in the military anymore, but you want to stay active and you want to stay physically fit, and but your time is limited. My thought process was like, well, if I'm gonna spend my time getting fit, but I'm gonna spend my time getting fit in something that actually gives me a skill set. So I'm not just gonna go to the gym and lift weights. I'm gonna go learn how to defend myself, how to fight, how to effectively grapple, and so I got in the community early on. There's only like 100,000 people in the U.S. back when I started in 2006 doing jujitsu. Now it's over 1 million people. So it's really blown up. It's grown categorically. It's unbelievable. But for me, like one of the biggest lessons that I get from jujitsu is when you are having a bad day, it's your worst day. You don't want to be there. There's a mental toughness that just gets you there in general. But if you're going through the motions, you're gonna get your butt kicked. Like
Right.
there's always somebody that's going to choke you out, that's going to throw you an arm bar, that's going to steal your lunch money that day. So when you're in your weakest moments of being in a combat sport, and mine happens to be jujitsu, and training that often, it requires you to be resilient and defend yourself when you don't want to. When if you were to go to the gym, you'd be going through the motions. You'd just be like, you know what,
Right.
do a couple easy sets, feel like I did something, maybe I get a little brisk sweat going, day's done, I'm okay. But in jujitsu, it's different because sparring is such a huge component of it. And if you are not all in on what you're doing, you are going to get crushed. And that's what I love about the sport, because it forces me to be strong. It forces me to defend myself. It forces me to apply technique, especially as I get older. When I was younger, my technique, I didn't spend as much time on it. I learned the positional stuff, and I learned the techniques I liked, but I got kind of sloppy. I was like Jimmy Page playing guitar. But now that I'm getting older, I want to be more like Eddie Van Halen or Joe Satriani. I'm like, the only way I'm going to beat the guys who I could be their dad is by getting way better at applying technique and applying those principles from John Donaher. So I think that for me, it's there's the resilience and the impact of being unfocused. Those are like, so when I look at jujitsu, I think about it as a combat sport, and the lessons I've learned are the precision application against exploiting a weakness or an opportunity, and then the resilience, because you're going to get defeated a lot, and you need to get back up and keep going.
Right.
And then it's the defending yourself, which builds that strength and fortitude related to resilience when you're having a day when you just don't want to compete. Because let's face it, everybody has days when they don't want to compete. Everybody has days when they want to put down the Twinkies, put on Netflix, eat Doritos. The best of us do. and I'm not the best of us, but there's a lot of people better than us that they still have those days.
Right.
So everybody has those days, and so that's where like a sport like jujitsu builds a level of mental toughness and resilience that I think is absolutely fundamental. And smaller stage ventures those, and also turnarounds, because
Right.
turnarounds are that can absolutely be, they can be soul crushing.
One of the things, it actually makes me think about one of the things that you did when you're at Killcliff. It was the Killcliff Fight Club, which I was like, when you told me about this idea and then you implemented it, I was just blown away. Could you just talk a little bit about what you did with the Killcliff Fight Club and why there was like, why it was like such a potential opportunity?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've learned, and the preface going into the Killcliff Fight Club story is, as a business leader, never order off the menu. Like, just never order off the menu. If you're ordering off the menu, you're playing inside the rules. You're not going to play. You're not going to win inside the rules. You need to move the goalposts. You need to change the rules. I'm not saying you need to be deceitful and break the law. I'm saying you need to be creative, and you need to think about how you can get and align interests in a way that help you achieve your goals. And many times ordering off the menu is not going to do that, right? And you also are going to have to be really, really innovative and frugal with your resources. Like, how can you get the most bang for your buck? So we had this opportunity that we've been nurturing for a long time with a professional mixed martial arts team. And it was interesting to us from the outset, because we were a sponsor. We got in as a sponsorship, and we couldn't really afford it. So we had to figure out first, like, how do we afford this thing? Because we're a beverage company. Like, we can be part of a big professional team. That's awesome. Like, everyone wants that in beverage. They want to have these big, sexy assets. In the beverage industry, they say beverage is a lifestyle accessory. There's a lot of truth to that. So we were really intrigued. And this is when the team had a different name. We weren't the title sponsor yet. So we cut a deal with them because they were awesome people. We didn't order off the menu, but we needed to win in order for them to win. And so we creatively hit the drawing board together, the canvas, and we were just like really honest. We're like, do we love you guys? Myself and the guy managing social media for us, we're both jiu-jitsu black belts. We love combat sports, blah, blah, blah. What can we do? Here's what we need. Here's what they need. And what we arrived at was that we had a commitment to charitable organizations that we were paying out of pocket, and we were, resource constrained. We're a small company or emerging company. And what we got them to do, because the amount of their sponsorship just to get involved was literally it was literally the same cost as we were paying for the charitable contribution out of our own pocket. So we're like, hey, look, we'll do this sponsorship with you if you commit to raising the money for us to pay our charitable dues. And they were like, done, because they love to do charitable work. Fighters loved it. So that got us in the sport. That was really exciting. And it allowed us to do a few things. Like, it gave us, it evolved. I guess I should talk about the evolution of the Killcliff Fight Club, where we took the title sponsorship, before I talk about some of the benefits. But so then there was an opportunity when the folks who were the previous sponsors of the team, they had a change of leadership and a change of focus in their organization, and we had built a really good partnership. We always emphasized building strong partnerships and enduring partnerships. We wanted partnerships with people who were going to really help each other out, and the people who own that fight team, that's the way they do business too. Great people. So again, we couldn't afford the title sponsorship. Like, that's a problem. Like, we want it, but we can't afford it. So what we did is we went to him again and said, hey, if we're the title sponsor, if we were to say, bring on other sponsors alongside of us, could that offset the monthly fee from our organization? So we're already getting the commitment to raise money for charities. And we basically, with them, it's like, and they were like, well, you know what? We will definitely do that to a level. And then at some level, it needs to be additive, right? So they were happy. They were happy to let us get to a comfortable, basically to get us back to what we were paying before we took the title sponsorship, which was completely cost neutral in our P&L, because it was the same as what we were paying the charity. And So we had the money going out for the sponsorship, and then they were raising money that was paying our charity. And then we did, when it ratcheted up to title sponsorship, they let us sell sponsorships to get back down to that level we were paying. And then after that, they would take the majority of any sponsorship we brought in. So we did that. And so it was super creative. That was not a menu option. That was a discussion of people trying to align their interests, that really do have interest in working with each other and finding a way to structure something that met the goals and objectives of all the parties involved. And so that we approached it creatively, and we looked at it because we've been in the influencer marketing game for a long time, in the social media game for a long time. And, there's so many, like, if you try to build like a huge ecosystem of influencers, it's just expensive. Like it's so expensive. And so we looked at this fight team. We're like, wait a second. The fight team has 80 professional fighters. They're all going to be consuming our products and creating social media for our company. That's outstanding. That's a huge benefit because we could never afford to go get 80 big influencers. So that was a huge thing. Hey, Ben, by the way, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm just agreeing with you.
Okay. And so that was a big thing, but there was more to it than that. If you looked at our industry at large, because our growth grew off of two products that we launched, two lines of products that were in two different categories. One was energy drinks. So the business had been traditionally a recovery drink business, which there was a lot of product market fit problems there. But energy drink was really good. Navy SEAL brand called Kill Cliff, aggressive energy drink, male predominant audience. What's ground zero for energy drinks? Well, they're some of these big events like NASCAR and other things, but in particular UFC. We got into the CBD drink world, and the same thing with that. Like, where's ground zero for hemp and cannabis? The UFC. They were the first organization to really bring on sponsors in these categories. What can Kill Cliff not afford? The UFC. So what we did is we went and got the largest, most successful fight team in the UFC, and Bellator, and then won the largest pro MMA organization worldwide, and we got named Kill Cliff Fight Club.
Amazing.
So what that means is every time an announcer is talking about our fighters during a UFC fight night, they're talking about, Kamaru Usman's back on the team now. Kamaru Usman from the Kill Cliff Fight Club. The list just goes. Michael Chandler from the Kill Cliff Fight Club. Gilbert Burns from the Kill Cliff Fight Club. And the beauty of it is some of these guys they're sponsored by different companies we compete with, but they're still part of our club. Right. So we get all the action out of that. So and it's a great way to be omnipresent in the fight world without having to pay the big fees that we couldn't afford as a small growing brand. So we've always been very, very agile and very creative in thinking about ways in which we can maximize our impressions, maximize our brand awareness with a very defined audience in the most cost efficient way. And that was one of the coolest things that we did. And it's going to be that way. It was a multi-year deal, so it's going to extend for at least a few more years. And it was exciting, and it is exciting because we were able to get rid of PR. We didn't have to pay for PR anymore because we have a fight team and those fighters get PR every week. We were able to get rid of influencers because we don't need influencers anymore. We have 80 fighters. Right. The list goes on and on. We were able to and then we took over the management of their social media channel, and we almost doubled the size of it since we started working on it because we had people that knew how to do social media and organically do it well. And they were able to take that control, that handle, and grow it. And then we were able to bring brand partnerships. We were able to bring sponsors in, with not only brought down our fee, but then we were able to do like email giveaways, like, hey, all the Kill Cliff Fight Club sponsors are getting together to give a winner a 1 month supply of X. And next thing you know, we get 30,000 email addresses, and we have a 3% conversion rate on those email addresses. And so we get X number of customers at $100 average order value. And it paid for itself.
Yeah, I thought that was amazing. When you told me about it, I was like, there's no way that's going to happen. But you made it happen. It was just like, and the idea of them announcing your fight club at every UFC event. It's unbelievable.
Well, the gift keeps on giving. It hasn't stopped. I won't get into all the specifics right now, But there's a prominent documentary team that did some of the big hits on some of the streaming networks, and they're going to be doing a docu-series on the Kill Cliff Fight Club. So now it's going to be streaming. It'll be, they're going to start filming it soonish. So say next year sometime. I don't know how long all it takes, but at some point in the future, there's going to be new episodes almost every week going up on the world's largest streaming platform that are going to be professionally done by a team that has massive accolades for other work that they've done. It's going to be telling the stories of the fighters and the team and everything about it, going in. So it's going to be, think about like Hard Knocks, but for MMA, but not like the Ultimate Fighter type stuff where it's like, that's a reality show. This will be like following fighters and stuff. So there will be a reality element, but it's like, it's showing the life and training and nutrition and family and all that. So how many impressions are we getting out of that? And how much would a company pay for that? And we had our relationship set up to where over time it cost it, not day one and not even in year one, but executing around the sponsorships, bringing in the sub sponsors and executing on the charitable donations at the end of a cycle, say 12 to 18 months, costs $0, $0 out of pocket for all that.
That's what's amazing. I see so many people, they're like, well, execute the playbook, which I mean, I think there's definitely value in it, but like executing outside the playbook can have such huge rewards if you do it correctly.
You have to, especially when, I mean, there's certain things that you do inside the playbook, right? But like, but I mean, when you're really trying to build a brand, if you're trying to do it without being super creative and trying to figure out how to get an edge, right. And you really, there's so much that you need, but you need a strong partner ecosystem that loves your brand and wants to build your brand with you, and then you can reciprocate as you grow. And building that partner ecosystem and developing that brand. Look, I mean, it can be done, and it can be done in a way that's hyper creative that maximizes brand awareness. And I think you kind of have to do that if you want to win, unless you're liquid death. I know that's a polarizing thing to say, but if you're liquid death, I mean, great guys, I'm sure, 12% gross margin, 12% gross margin, marketing dollars, unbelievable, $75 million raised after a few years of being in business, and then another 75 million raised after that. I mean, they're bleeding money. So some of these larger companies, Zoa by The Rock, Liquid Death. I mean, I'm just talking beverage. I mean, these companies are literally eviscerating. Their bottom line is just like a molten mess. Like they're losing so much. Super Coffee, they're losing so much money to try to build a brand the old-fashioned way inside the playbook. And that is, if you're a founder, if you're an entrepreneur in an early stage company and you want to play that game, you will absolutely get slaughtered. Unless you have big backers. If you have big backers, more power, go do it. Have fun. They're willing to lose. If they're willing to lose millions and millions of dollars a year, then you'll get it. But and these companies are not losing millions, they're losing tens of millions a year.
Unbelievable.
So that's, I mean, just food for thought. But if you move the goalposts, that's what you should be always thinking about, how you can move the goalposts. And if you can figure out how to move the goalposts efficiently, you're playing outside the rules. You're setting up a new rule set, and that's where entrepreneurs win.
And along those lines, you also led, which I'd say, the most successful CBD beverage launch and probably in history. And it came from like, literally, I remember you sitting there, like it just didn't exist. It came completely from your mind, and then you carried it through execution. Tell me about that, because it was when you're launching it, there's a lot of challenges that may not be present today. But you just took this idea from nothing to a hugely successful launch.
Yeah, I was very fortunate at the time to have supportive investors, because at the time that I launched the CBD beverage, it was not widespread, and there was a lot of gray area. There's still a lot of gray area around it, but it was very pioneering at the time. I was the largest beverage company in the world to launch a CBD beverage, or at least in America. There may be somebody overseas I don't know about, but there was no one else that was established doing it. And when I say established, I mean we had distribution for our recovery drink, and we were building distribution for our energy drink, and in blue chip customers in stores, Walmart, Sprouts, Whole Foods, Fresh Market. We were in HEB, Wegmans, Jewel Osco. We were on the West Coast in the Albertsons Safeway world. I mean, these are big marquee chains that people in CPG world, they really want those. They want to build brands around those chains. Even today, with the predominance of the emergence and the continued emergence of the DTC world, and you've seen what Amazon's doing as well with Amazon Fresh and all that stuff, with all this, the online and the convenience of it post coronavirus lockdowns. There's still, like, retail is still like, I mean, I'm not a big retail brand building guy myself, but just speaking completely objective, it's still super, super impactful, super influential. And it's still where the lion's share of the money is spent for food and beverage. Right. So long story short, it was very disruptive for us to have that type of distribution and to kind of bifurcate our product portfolio and move into CBD. And the impetus for it, I had a lot of support from investors. I personally believed in the product because of being a dumb dude. I broke my ankle on a snowboarding trip, and I snowboarded for like 7 days after breaking it. And because I'd already paid for the trip, and I had a guy's house and we were having fun. And I had chronic pain afterwards. I didn't think I had broken my ankle. It was black and blue. I just thought I sprained it. And so like 6 months goes by, and it's getting worse. And I'm kind of like, I'm really in pain. And I went to the doctor, and they said, at first they said I had a high ankle sprain. It was like a bad, but it healed, and it didn't get better. And I went back like later, like a year later, and I had the actual orthopedic look at it, the PA, and they're like, oh yeah, you broke this thing. And so I was like, all right, great. So I was thinking about, like, because I was a very active guy. Like, I remember my first class back to jujitsu after a snowboarding trip, they were doing ankle locks. I'm like, dude, come on, man. But
Of course.
I heard Hugh Douglas, the old Philadelphia Eagles player. He was a shock jock radio host in Atlanta, and I'm listening to him one day, going down to the Killcliff headquarters, and he was talking about how he put CBD cream on his knees, and that was helping him like reduce the pain so he could actually stay active in the weight room as a his post NFL career, and he wanted to stay fit. And so I thought that was it was very organic. It wasn't like he wasn't endorsing a brand. They were just having a conversation, a bunch of dudes shooting the breeze, laughing, having fun. So I was like, you know what? That actually sounds like it might help him. So I went a couple of days later, I went with some people from Killcliff to a little store called Nuts and Berries in Atlanta, talked to the person there, was very knowledgeable, and I ended up buying some capsules and also some balm, and it worked. Like, I was like, oh man, my ankle feels better. Like it wasn't like enduring, but it felt better for a while. So it was actually, when it was really bad, I put it on, I have relief. I was like, this is nice. I like this. I definitely feel, and so I started educating. So when I had this opportunity, I was meeting with investors, and they're like, hey, have you ever thought about putting CBD in a drink? And they were in Boulder, so they were obviously very progressive in the area. And I was like, absolutely, I have. I'm putting a lot of thought into it because I don't know why we wouldn't. It helps the body in so many ways, and I personally have benefited from consuming edibles and edible CBD, and also the topicals. And everyone in my company was former military or athletes. We all kind of we were all our own consumer, and so that led to an opportunity. We're like, hey, we have a big meeting in New York with they were a private equity group that had big investors, with one of our biggest investors, and we'd like to kind of present something to them. Do you think you can? Do you think you can do something? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Give me a few weeks. So at the time I was probably breaking like 10 laws when I got on the airplane to New York with these little like 8-ounce or 6-ounce trial. I created a CBD beverage in 3 weeks in a lab, and I took it to New York for all these people. We had a huge discussion about CBD with a big capital partner, and then they tried the drink, and it was our best tasting drink ever in the history of the brand. I'm completely unbiased in saying that, even though I created it. It was like everyone you talk to, you're like, yeah, it's like our original drink, but better. And they all loved it. And they said, "Hey, go do it." And so we mapped out. We looked at the risks a little bit. We talked to some attorneys, but it was more kind of like, let's lean forward to make this happen. We understand there's going to be risk. We understand the market's going to change. We understand that something weird could happen, but let's just go do it. So we did it. And within 90 days, we were in market with the launch of CBD. Within 2 or 3 weeks of launching it, we got completely shut down by the banks, because we thought we had a payment processor, everything was good, and we were doing volumes that they'd never seen,
Right.
and they shut us down because they were scared. And we had to go through a couple payment processors, a couple banks, but then they all stabilized for us. But what was really crazy was, I remembered it was September 13th, and I think it was 2019. All of a sudden there's this Instagram post, and it's Joe Rogan saying, "Hey, I found my new favorite drink." And it was CBD. And we were off to the races. And we couldn't execute on the demand. He drove so much demand to our website, and we couldn't execute on it because we were offline. So that was like tragic. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. But the first thing I did when I had the opportunity, because we were building a new market, is I actually invested ahead of revenue on this one, and because I needed to get some exposure, and I tested a lot of things, and my first instinct was like, well, let's go where the market is. Let's put some ads in Leafly and some of these other cannabis magazines and High Times. Let's get on there. Let's get some editorials about our brand, some PR. That stuff was like, it was like a Led Zeppelin, man. It crashed. What I realized really quick is that the cannabis culture is the cannabis culture, and that's the big Achilles heel of the entire hemp, CBD, and cannabis industry. Is these people are super nerds. They'll tell you about every strain that they possibly have, and they'll talk about all the benefit, and but it's all cannabis culture. Like, you look at now, all their marketing is edging towards alcohol replacement. There's such a huge medicinal quality to hemp and CBD, and cannabis, that's why it's been medicinal, and that's why cancer patients have been using it for years. And the industry writ large, at least on the consumer side, the non-pharmaceutical side, these guys are missing the boat completely. They're just all about like, let's figure out how we can extract THC from these plants and get stoned and like put it in beverages. And I mean, there's a huge market for that for sure, for certain. But I realized pretty quick, because we didn't get any sales from that community at all. And part of my thinking behind building the product was, at the time, like, when I got the green light to produce a product, part of the discussion that we did have was like the audience, right? And I was very keen on the audience being all my employees, and who I'd already mentioned, a lot of them were using CBD. They were like ground zero first adopters, and none of them were cannabis culture. They were athletes. And I looked at our community. We had a lot of sales in the CrossFit community. CrossFit they were early adopters of all things health and wellness. So they were putting these topicals on, and they were consuming edibles, and like they were using it for, to reduce inflammation and to recover. But also, what was more near and dear to my heart was the military veteran community that was stuck on heavy opioids from the VA to try to support PTSD. And the three real main, even to this day, the three biggest, I think the biggest reasons why people go down the CBD and hemp route is pain relief, inflammation, and also anxiety. Those are the three problems they're trying to solve for initially. And there's a lot more that you can get from CBD and hemp and all that, but those are the three biggies on the health and wellness side. And I looked at the veteran community and the veteran audience who we had pivoted back into when I took leadership. And I was like, well, these people are struggling. They're consuming this. They're like early adopters. So it lined up the market for us. So after like 4 or 5 months of failing, putting ads in these big cannabis tabloids and PR, and trying to run ad sets against those through different media to that group, I said, the hell with it. And I went straight into health and wellness, like big picture. Like, I'm going to the CrossFit, I'm going to the veterans. I'm focused on the athletic utility of having hemp in your product. And it was a complete departure from what anyone in the industry was doing. And it also resonated with guys like Joe Rogan. And that led to us doing a deal with Joe Rogan where he owns a chunk of the company. So I set up a deal where, Joe, it was perfect. And what I did with Joe Rogan is I wrote him a letter. I literally wrote him a letter like I was trying to get into college. He And then we started a text message exchange. One day he texted me out of the blue, and we texted each other for like 6 months. It took like 6 months of nurturing that relationship. And for years, he knew of our brand because he had different Navy SEALs on his podcast. So he was kind of like he was a down low drinker of Killcliff. So we weren't foreign to him. So we've been nurturing it organically for a long time, but we didn't have any relationships with Joe. We had no direct interaction. So one day I'm watching the Atlanta Falcons get crushed on September day, maybe in early October at this point. He'd already posted about the brand and all that stuff. And my phone starts like vibrating. I'm like, oh, what's that? Go look at it. I was like, yo, bro, this is Joe Rogan. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. So he was so cool. We just started talking, and it literally took about 3 months for him to introduce me to his agents. Like he just would communicate and we talk and we communicate and talk. Amazing. And it took about 3 months. And then I was like, hey man, like there's people who know we're communicating. You've expressed interest, maybe becoming part of the brand. Like they want answers from me. How do I progress this forward? He's like, oh, you haven't met my agents? And he introduced me to his agents. And then it took another few months working with his agents to kind of hammer it out. And what we ultimately did was we set up an opportunity for Joe Rogan to take ownership in the business, but where there was a big departure, and this goes back to, having confidence, being bold, trusting your instincts, and also creating alignment and incentives and partners, enduring partners, is we didn't ask for anything. And that was hard because the investors put millions of dollars into this business, and they wanted to make sure they got a return on investment. But we had built a good relationship with Joe and a really good relationship with his agents. And they advised us. We went and said, hey, our investors are interested in these things. Is that something and they're like, look, like you can put that in front of Joe, and you probably won't hear from us again. Or you know what, like you can just let Joe do what Joe does and take the leap of faith and see what happens. And I was like, I'm absolutely doing that. Like I want him, I don't want it to be contrived. I want this to be organic. I don't want to pay for an ad on his podcast. I just want to be organically in his lifestyle because I want it to be real, because it's already real. I don't want to compromise what's real and authentic about it. And so, and I got a lot of heat from that. Even afterwards, like Joe Rogan tripled the Killcliff business. Like that relationship aligned with what we were doing in the category. Those were the key catalysts that tripled our business. And I still had investors that were unhappy. Like, can we get them to talk to this buyer? Can we get them to this? I'm like, are you guys kidding me? Like, look what's happening. He did. And then he did. We had a lot of success around the CBD line. And so he took ownership in the business, and we were doing well in the CBD line. And it was all an experiment. Like we didn't know where it was going to go. And we kind of had this thing going. We were like, we want 5 flavors every line that we produce. And we need to produce one more flavor for our CBD beverage to kind of hit that goal. And we guys reached out to him like, hey man, you interested in custom designing our final flavor? And he's like, absolutely. And I was like, this is fantastic. So this is all like, he wouldn't just do this if we hadn't built a strong relationship and we established mutual trust. And we were okay with going into it saying, look, we're going to give you something of value that we've created, because we know you're going to take it to the next level, but we're just going to let you do that however you do it. We're not going to try to direct you. We're not going to we just want it to be real. And so that really was amazing. And then he became like, I would send him when we were rebranding stuff, he'd start giving me input on cans and on website and on product ideas. And so it's funny because the first drink we launched was this spicy pineapple drink. And that was unbelievable. Like we never sold out so fast in our lives. Like it was like, we thought we were building a 3-month supply, and we sold out in about 45 days. And then it was so successful. One of the things I did next is I created an exact replica of that drink that didn't have CBD in it. There was an energy drink, because I had people like Walmart that wanted to distribute it. So we hit the right demand signal, and it was getting proven. And we are now infused on the largest podcast platform in the world. And people are seeing this, and now we're getting calls from folks. And so Walmart's like, hey, we want this on our shelf. And we're like, well, guess what? We're making one without CBD, so you can have that. And so that just led to a lot of good things in the business. And then so we had these 2 drinks with Joe, and then a lot of stuff, there's a lot of history and things that happen here and there. And then before I stepped away from the business at the end of July, I launched another collaboration with Joe that we've been working on together for a little over a year. He had texted me one day, and he was hunting with a famous bow hunter named Cameron Haynes, who he's really good friends with. and they texted a picture to us before they posted it, and it was this massive, this dinosaur of an elk that they had successfully harvested, and they were super pumped. And he jokingly said, "Would it be great if we like commemorated this by creating a spicy cherry?" Because the first drink we did was spicy pineapple. He's like a spicy cherry drink and calling it elk blood. And I said, "Absolutely, but it's got to be in this new line of products that I'm thinking about because I need an anchor for that line." And he said, "No problem." And so it took a while to get right, and we finally got it right, and we launched it. And we launched it in June of this year, and by every statistic, it just wiped out any previous launch in the history of the company. We had a 2 month supply based upon the original Flaming Joe launch, and we sold out in 2 weeks. Our average order values were higher than we'd ever seen. The influx of traffic at the time was more than we'd ever seen, and the activation all the way around was just, it was awesome, because now it wasn't only Joe, now it was Joe and Cam, and they started out an entire podcast episode talking about the drink, and they were so proud of it. We have we had the custom art on the product that they were involved in. We actually our artists at the time actually sketched their elk, the elk that they harvested on the can. So on the can that's actually their elk. And so the whole thing was really surreal and cool. But that's the whole CBD story, and it's becoming because the whole
talk about authenticity, but it's really cool to hear that whole relationship that you had with Joe was like authentic from the beginning to the end. It wasn't just buying time. Like, he came up and helped develop the flavor. He was like organically talking about it on his show. Like, the relationship you developed with him was all, it's amazing to hear, because everyone talks about authenticity, but it's very interesting to hear a story where it's actually based on authenticity and see the success. It's not.
Yeah, the key is not I think you're right, and I think the key is like you don't want to you don't want to like compromise the authenticity. And marketers tend to be, and leaders tend to be overly zealous to compromise unintentionally the authenticity that makes a brand special. And that's what was happening when I first joined Killcliff. When I first joined Killcliff, the investors, in their best intention, they literally put the Navy SEAL Foundation on the top of every can as our charitable partner, like huge. It was like bigger than the word Killcliff on the can. And as a former Navy SEAL, I know that no Navy SEAL would ever do that. And it confused customers. People didn't know, like, what's this brand? Is this produced by Navy SEAL Foundation, or is this Killcliff? And like, what makes that so special? Like, it obscured everything. So they destroyed the authenticity, and that was really difficult to rebuild. But it's interesting. At the end of 2022, we were, and I say the end of 2022 because that's the last data set I had, and then we went through an ownership transition in the last year, so there were a lot of changes. But we were the largest CBD beverage by market share in America, and we were the only ones doing things different. Everyone else was going after the cannabis culture and everything. And I mean, it must drive them crazy, because we didn't go to any of the trade shows. We didn't go to any of the conventions. We didn't try to keynote any of the events. We didn't do any of that stuff. We just focused on executing for our audience with what they wanted, with a message that would resound with them. And it was a complete departure from what anybody in the industry was doing then. And honestly, what anybody's doing now. CBD brands they're all spray and pray. They have like 10 different categories of products on their website. They're like CBD evangelists, and they're just all going after the same finite, 10% of the population. And that's just not the play for that market, unfortunately. But there's a lot of money and a lot of nerds wrapped up in thinking that it is.
Man, you got so many good stories. You could
I can go on and on, man. Let's keep going.
No, but the thing I want to talk about now is something I'm really excited about, which is what you're doing now is just focusing on a specific niche, which I think is just a huge opportunity. So I think it would be really interesting to hear about like what you see as this opportunity and why it exists, because I think this developing customized products for certain audiences in the way that you're talking about it is going to be a really powerful thing moving forward. So I just want to hear about your vision around it and what it looks like moving forward.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, thank you, Ben. So we just look at the trend line since we've been productive adults. it's the consumerization effect on IT. We saw that in tech, right? Like that was like 15 years ago we were talking about that. It's the personalization that continues to occur. Like every product, every innovation, people try to make the experience more and more personalized at scale. So I think that's a backdrop trend that's happening. We have so much access to so much information. Algorithms are trying to give us exactly what we need, exactly what we want all the time. So it infuses every aspect of our life. So in that context, and what I noticed and what I learned at Killcliff was, and this is an important lesson I think for all entrepreneurs, is that staying focused and really winning in the areas that this is your demarcation line, this is your field, you're going to win this. That's a really important thing to do, because what happens with success is everybody wants a piece of the action, so it becomes really important to say no. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson to like entrepreneurs who are starting to thrive is to say no. And when you're on top of the hill and you get these really interesting opportunities, make decisions based upon where you were, like when you weren't on top of the hill.
Right. Yeah.
Because you'll make bad decisions because you'll get arrogant. You'll think, oh man, we're growth forever. But those are lessons. So what I saw though is these brands that would go into specific niches, and they would just really, and there are a lot more one product brands, and they would have these absolutely incredible stories, and they would grow significantly. So when I looked to be, to really, because I was a guy who, I was a turnaround guy. I turned around 3 businesses, and then when I got into Killcliff, it was a turnaround. I didn't start it, but I actually started everything that drove the growth.
Right.
In the second phase of growth. First, they had a huge first phase of growth just from the founding period, but then it atrophied for a few years. So I founded everything that started that second phase. But what was really interesting is this was an opportunity for me to kind of, with new ownership coming in, for me to like do my own thing and take my lessons on the road. And when you're building a business, obviously you want to solve a problem. If you're not solving a problem, you're not, like, what's the point? Like, what are you doing? Right. So I've been in jiu-jitsu for almost 17, 18 years at this point, I think. And the problem I have as an aging grappler is finding good content on nutrition, strength and conditioning, for my sport, for my hobby. And so I decided to create with another friend a brand that's completely focused on sports nutrition for combat athletes, because it doesn't exist. When you look at the world of sports nutrition, aka supplements, they fall in a few broad-based categories. You have stuff for bodybuilders, which is most of it, and then you have like health and wellness vitamins, which you might find on the shelves at Whole Food or Target, whatever. And then you have the endurance athletics. These guys they were pioneers, because endurance athletics early on, these guys had the bodybuilding stuff wasn't good for them. They needed something different. And there's these brands who have emerged, and you can look at it. You look at in CrossFit, First Form took supplements that are being used by bodybuilders, and they sold them to the CrossFit community. They said, you know what, we are going to be your brand. We're going to invest in that community, and we're going to grow with you. Now they do $200-300 million in revenue. You look at Science and Sport. Science and Sport is, you can find them in almost every cycling shop in America, and they're an endurance product that's designed for triathletes and cyclists. They're $100 million brand out of the UK, I believe, right? Something around there. So there's, the riches are in the niches. And I, as a person doing jiu-jitsu, I felt underserved, because I get frustrated. I look out in the internet, I'm like, I don't want that pre-workout. That's good. My heart's going to explode when I start. Right. I don't want that protein powder, because, actually the dirty secret of whey protein is 80% of it turns into waste in your body. It spikes your blood sugar, and you don't absorb it all. And it increases your uric acid levels. It's actually not that good for you. Right. So like, that's the dirty secret. And I don't want to put on weight. I'm trying to lose weight to get into a competitive weight class where I actually have a chance. Right. So like, I didn't find, I'm getting older, my joints are hurting me, and I'm researching on the market. I'm like, strength and conditioning for jiu-jitsu. I'm a Navy SEAL. Like, I know how to work out, but like, I need to work out for my sport, and I need functional fitness for jiu-jitsu. I don't want to be an exercise racer. I want to smartly complement and supplement my training with strength training. And then likewise, I want to go like I want to start consuming products that are going to let me do this for another 15 years or more. And they can help me in competition, mind, body, and soul. They're not out there. So if they're not out there, let's go ahead and do it. Well, what I know about the jiu-jitsu community is there were 100,000 people when I started in America. Now there's over 1 million people. There's 1.2 million people doing jiu-jitsu. The average American spends $60, $70 a month on supplements. Well, let's just assume these people doing athletes are spending, let's round it up to 100. You have $100 million being spent monthly on supplements by jiu-jitsu athletes who are 99% are hobbyists that are not made for them. And what I mean is there's really nothing made for them. You need in jiu-jitsu and other grappling sports, it's about fatigue management. You need to have cognitive and physical endurance, but it's about stamina. And stamina is kind of a hard word in the supplement world because it implies like, stuff that helps you with like sexual function or testosterone. That's not what this is. When you think about stamina, it's putting out a high level of output over an enduring period, right? That's what we want. We want work capacity. There's nothing out there that's really creating products that solve this need state and to speak to this community. So looking at the stats, it's obviously it has a lot of attributes when you look at like a community that builds something into. It's cultish. People get in it and it becomes a lifestyle and they stay in it. They have media assets. There's these massive media organizations now hosting jiu-jitsu tournaments. The UFC hosts jiu-jitsu tournaments. One hosts jiu-jitsu tournaments. You have who's number one? Flow Grappling. Flow Grappling is an entire online media company that they have a lot of sports now, but their bread and butter is grappling sports. So there's this huge media ecosystem that exists. There's this huge community of users that exist. In fact, there was just a convention in Vegas, Jiu-Jitsu Con. There were 10,000 competitors on the mats for a few days. Outside of video gaming, show me an industry that has 10,000 people congregate in a city for a competition over a few days. That just doesn't happen. And then all the companies are gear and apparel companies. They're all trying to sell T-shirts and gis and stuff and rash guards. So they're all doing the same thing. And so you're looking at this community that nobody's talking to, that's super active, health and wellness focused. It's an opportunity, right? So we're developing a framework of products, myself and my co-founders, who are also jiu-jitsu athletes that have spent 20 years or more in the sport. One of my co-founders, GW Garrison, is a two-time world champion black belt. And he also owned a CrossFit gym and did all that stuff. So he's very smart in this stuff. And then we have great innovation partners who we've met through the Kill Cliff Fight Club.
Right.
We have this amazing ecosystem, and we're going to build what no one else is doing, and that's called Grapple Science. And Grapple Science is literally a framework of nutritional products to help with cognitive endurance and agility. The first product launching is a nootropic product called Cognition, which honestly gives you non-stimulant, caffeine-free energy and focus all day long. In fact, we recommend taking it in the morning, even if you train at night, because you get an incredible amount of it increases the blood flow to your brain. It helps you with clarity and focus, and and also we put ingredients in there. They're scientifically studied to help improve your mood, so it gets you in the mindset to train. Because cognitive endurance is a big deal. When I was a Navy SEAL, when I was going through SEAL training, you would see it. Like when people start to get fatigued mentally, that's when they quit. Right. So, and mental toughness is such a big part of the sport. If you're doing consecutive 8-minute rounds, which is a tradition and a norm in training, like after the first couple of rounds, you're crushed. I mean, you're going at 80 to 100% capacity for 8 minutes, taking a 1-minute break and doing it again for 8 minutes, taking a 1-minute break and doing it for. So the second you start getting mentally weak and you're losing your focus, you're crushed. And our products actually will have with the products we're using, which are all NIH studied ingredients, they'll give you that sensation, that feeling of energy and that focus without actually increasing your blood pressure or your heart rate, because you want to keep those calm. And then we have frameworks of products in other categories. We have a hydration product, it's not a hydration powder. It's nothing like that. Those things are like, to me, they're kind of like the greens products. They're all a scam. Like you don't need that with a good diet. And the way they're created is really kind of shady. But like we're actually using documented products like glycerol, and glycerol retains water in your muscles longer. And it's a studied ingredient for athletic performance. It's already adopted by the endurance community. And it's sometimes used because it keeps water in your holds water in your muscles. You'll sometimes see it in like pre-workouts and like pump type products. But what it does, all things being equal, the person who stays hydrated longer um, is the person that's going to win. And so
Right.
we have a product that's going to support that need state. We have a recovery product and lactic acid buffer type products. So we have these really cool products. They're uniquely designed for the rigors of sport. But the reality is we're looking at a community that's completely underserved. And this idea of sport specific nutrition you see emerging, you see it happening in different ecosystems because it goes along with all the trends we see towards personalization, consumerization. People want stuff that fits in their lifestyle, and they're busy. They don't want to do the research. So like I've been looking for years for supplementation to help me be to be a better performance on the mats as a jiu-jitsu player, to have the endurance and the strength to go on and fight these long rounds and to compete. And there's just nothing out there, and the stuff that's out there is kind of bogus. So we've created an entire brand around it, and we're launching it. We're within 4 to 5 weeks of launch. We've actually, everything's on procurement right now. Our website's being built. We're slowly starting to stand up our social media. But it's amazing. We have this huge ecosystem of support coming out the gates, because when we were doing Killcliff, we did it the right way. We built strong, enduring partnerships, and those are the people that are rallying around what we're doing now that can help us shoot this thing out of the cannon.
Right.
So
I mean, it's so, I mean, I think it's so smart, because think about the athletic shoe market. Like back in the 50s, everyone's wearing cons, and now now there's a specific shoe. I mean, I was at a track meet with my son. They have shot put shoes. They have obviously wrestling shoes, basketball. I mean, so people are buying and investing in shoes to get that competitive advantage. Why wouldn't they do something similar around what they're putting in their bodies, their nutrition?
That's it's exactly right. Nutrition, like, why wouldn't every sport has different rigors? If you can figure out like what the key aspects of your sport are, then why couldn't you build a nutrition? I mean, that's what happens at the elite level. That's what's happening with NFL and NBA and all these, pro teams. They have nutritionists. They have people who design supplementation and design, I've heard that some of the diets of these athletes are actually pretty terrible. It's kind of like SEAL training where you can't get enough calories, but right. They do have sport specific people designing the products for them. And you're starting to see the personalization in consumer goods, specifically around supplements. There's brands out there that you can see where you go to their website and they hit you with a survey first. And based upon how you perform in the survey, they recommend baskets of goods to you. Right. Because they're trying to give you that personalized effect of like, well, based upon how you describe yourself and what we know about our vitamins, our nutrients, our food, this is what you need. Right. Yeah. I mean, so that's what we're doing. Grapple Science. It's a lot of fun because it's all the lessons we learned along the way at Killcliff we can apply to this, but it's also, I've been in the community authentically for 17, 18 years. It's something, I mean, when we first met in DC, I was doing it. I tried to get you to do it. It really, it's really, I think to me, I think that's the next frontier in nutraceuticals and this more lifestyle, like bespoke products. I think we've already seen them, as you said, in like different categories like shoes and other apparel. But I think why wouldn't that extend to other elements of our life, especially the fuel we put in our tank, which is our nutrition.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Makes total sense. Well, I can't wait to see it out there. I have very high hopes because it makes total sense. And so I'm really excited about that. And I think that was it. That was it, man. You shared a lot of information. I really appreciate your time, and we'll
do it again, man. Let's do it again. We'll get up all day.
I know. There's so many more good stories to share. So I really appreciate your time, John.
Well, I will say that when you got involved in helping us in Killcliff, when I first got there, it was a game changer. Like, because we aligned around how do we take a field activated business and move it into the digital world and then scale it. And like everything we did, like we built the field of dreams that then when Rogan happened and when coronavirus happened and all those things happened, these exogenous things that we had very little control of, we were able to exploit the opportunities. it was like jujitsu. We were able to put all of our effort into that one weak point where in the time people weren't selling drinks online. Consumer product packaged goods companies weren't actually, they didn't care about online business until all that happened.
Right. I know. I mean, thinking about that. I mean, there's so many good. I mean, I think what you did at Killcliff was really, I mean, I just thinking about back upon it. It's like, I mean, we talked about authenticity, but it's like you had such a focus on making sure that the messaging and brand was correct for your audience. And I mean, and authenticity was a big component of it, but it has to be unique and distinct. I mean, and then like you're saying, the online distribution was such a critical component of what you did. I mean, there's just so much more we could talk about on this. So we'll definitely have to do this again.
For sure, man. That's great. Well, I appreciate everything. I appreciate the opportunity to be a guest on your show, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, John.
Thank you, dude.
All right.